Hey collectors and coin enthusiasts, welcome back to Numismatic Treasures. You know, sometimes the most extraordinary finds can be hiding in plain sight. That pocket change you've been ignoring? It might contain a fortune. Today, we're examining two quarters that look ordinary but could be worth thousands. The 1982 and 1991 quarters with fascinating minting errors that have coin collectors scrambling. These aren't your grandfather's rare coins from the 1800s. These are modern treasures that could be sitting in your coin jar right now. So before you spend that quarter on a gumball, you might want to take a closer look. Let's start with the 1982 Washington quarter. This coin tells a remarkable story of transition and human error during a pivotal moment in U.S. mint history. 1982 was a year of change for American coinage. The mint was experimenting with different metal compositions, trying to find more cost-effective alternatives to the traditional copper-nickel clad quarters that had been in circulation since 1965. But amid this transition, something extraordinary happened. The Philadelphia Mint, which typically produces billions of coins annually, made a mistake that would create one of the most sought-after modern rarities. Some 1982 quarters were accidentally struck on copper-nickel planchets that were missing their copper core. These are known as no-P quarters because they lack the Philadelphia Mint mark, which wasn't added to quarters until 1980. What makes this error so fascinating is how it happened. During normal production, quarter blanks are composed of three layers, a pure copper core sandwiched between two outer layers of copper-nickel. But somehow, a small batch of quarters was struck on planchets that were missing their copper core entirely. This resulted in a quarter that weighs approximately 5.7 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams, a difference invisible to the naked eye but significant to numismatists. The 1982 no-copper core quarter has a distinct appearance if you know what to look for. Unlike regular quarters which have a copper-colored edge, these rare specimens have a solid silver-colored edge. When you hold a regular quarter and a no-copper core quarter side by side, you'll notice the difference in color along the rim. Regular quarters have that distinctive copper band visible on the edge, while these error coins show a uniform silver color throughout. Another identifying feature is the sound. Drop a regular quarter and this error coin on a hard surface, and you'll hear a different ring. The solid copper-nickel composition produces a higher-pitched sound compared to the duller thud of a regular quarter with its copper core. Collectors often use this ping test as a quick way to identify potential rarities. What's truly remarkable about this error is its rarity. Numismatic experts estimate that fewer than 100 authenticated specimens exist today. That's astonishingly rare for a modern coin, especially one that was released into general circulation. Most minting errors are caught during the quality control process, but these slipped through and found their way into everyday Americans' pockets and purses. The market value for these coins has skyrocketed over the years. In uncirculated condition, what we call mint state, or MS in the collecting world, these quarters can fetch between $2,500 to $5,000. Even in circulated condition, they're worth hundreds of dollars. In 2012, a particularly pristine example graded MS 67 sold at auction for an astounding $7,475. That's nearly 30,000 times its face value. But here's what makes this coin hunt so exciting. New specimens are still being discovered. Unlike many rare coins that are well documented and mostly in collections, these error quarters are still turning up in circulation. Just last year, a collector in Oregon found one in a roll of quarters from his local bank. He had it authenticated and sold it for $2,800. Not bad for a 25-cent investment. The condition of these quarters dramatically affects their value, as with all numismatic treasures. A 1982 no-copper core quarter in MS 65 condition, meaning it has very few contact marks and retains most of its original luster, might be worth around $3,000. The same coin in circulated condition, perhaps with visible wear on Washington's hair or the eagle's feathers, might bring $200 to $500. That's why it's crucial to handle potential rarities carefully. Even fingerprints can reduce a coin's grade and value. There's a fascinating story about a vending machine operator in Pennsylvania who, in 1998, noticed something odd about a quarter he'd collected on his route. The coin didn't sound right when he dropped it into his collection bag. Being a casual collector, he set it aside and later discovered He had one of these rare 1982 quarters. He sold it for enough to put a down payment on a new service truck for his business. Imagine that, a single quarter changing someone's livelihood. The discovery of these error coins sparked a mini gold rush in the early 2000s when news of their value first spread. Coin dealers reported people bringing in coffee cans full of 1982 quarters they'd been saving, hoping to strike it rich. Most were disappointed, of course, but the hunt continues today. There's something wonderfully democratic about error coins like these. Anyone with patience and a good eye has a chance of finding one. What's particularly interesting about the 1982 no copper core quarter is how it represents a snapshot of American manufacturing during a time of economic challenge. The early 1980s were marked by high inflation and rising metal costs, which pushed the mint to experiment with alternative compositions. This era occurred during that period of transition and experimentation, making it not just a valuable coin, but a tangible piece of economic history. For collectors, part of the allure is the thrill of the hunt. Unlike many rare coins that are priced well beyond the average collector's budget, these quarters represent an accessible treasure. You don't need deep pockets or specialized knowledge to start looking, just a roll of quarters from the bank and a keen eye. It's the numismatic equivalent of a lottery ticket, but with much better odds. If you think you might have one of these rare quarters, there are a few steps to take before getting too excited. First, check the date. It must be 1982. Then, examine the edge. You're looking for a solid silver color with no copper band. Weigh the coin if you have a precision scale. It should be slightly lighter than a standard quarter. And finally, try the ping test. Drop it on a hard surface alongside a regular quarter and listen for a higher pitched ring. Authentication is crucial, though. The market is unfortunately flooded with altered coins where the copper core has been artificially removed or hidden. Professional grading services like PCGS or NGC can verify your find and also assign it a grade, which helps determine its value. The authentication fee is well worth it if you have a genuine specimen. What makes the 1982 no copper core quarter so captivating is that it reminds us that imperfection can be valuable. In a world obsessed with flawlessness, here's a case where a mistake created something worth thousands. It's a humbling reminder that even institutions as precise as the US Mint can slip up, and sometimes those slip-ups become treasured collectibles. Now let's shift our attention to another quarter that might be hiding in your change jar, the 1991 Washington quarter. This coin tells a different but equally compelling story of mint errors and collector opportunity. The early 1990s were a time of high production at the US Mint. With the economy recovering from recession, demand for circulating coinage was strong, and the Philadelphia and Denver mints were working overtime. During this period of high-volume production, quality control occasionally suffered, leading to some fascinating errors, including our featured 1991 quarter. What makes the 1991 quarter special is a specific die error known as a double die obverse. Now, don't confuse this with a double strike, which is something entirely different. A double die error occurs during the manufacturing of the die itself, the stamping tool used to impress the design onto blank coins. When there's a slight misalignment during the hubbing process that creates the die, it results in a doubled image on every coin struck by that die. On the 1991 double die quarter, the doubling is most noticeable in the word Liberty and in the date. If you look closely with a magnifying glass, you'll see what appears to be a shadow or echo of these letters and numbers, slightly offset from the primary impression. It's as if the word was stamped twice, with the second impression slightly out of alignment with the first. The doubling is particularly visible in the L and B of Liberty and in the 1 and 9 of 1991. These double die errors are fascinating because they're not one-off mistakes. Once a die is created with this error, it will strike thousands of coins with the same doubling effect before it's retired. This means there are potentially thousands of these error coins out there, though they represent just a tiny fraction of the roughly 600 million quarters produced in 1991. The Philadelphia Mint was responsible for this particular error, so look for quarters without a mint mark, as Philadelphia didn't use one in 1991. The Denver coins from that year, marked with a small d, don't show this specific doubling pattern. What's particularly exciting about the 1991 double die quarter is that it wasn't widely recognized until several years after its release. By that time, Most of these quarters had entered circulation and experienced wear. This makes high-grade examples particularly rare and valuable. A mint state, MS 65 or better, 1991 double-die quarter can command prices between $1,200 and $3,000, depending on the strength of the doubling and the overall quality of the coin. Even circulated examples with visible wear can fetch $100 to $400, which is still an impressive return on a 25-cent coin. In 2018, a particularly well-preserved specimen graded MS 67 by PCGS sold for an astonishing $4,300 at a major coin auction. The buyer, a specialist in error coins, called it one of the clearest examples of double-die obverse on a Washington quarter he'd ever seen. There's a wonderful story about a retired postal worker in Michigan who discovered one of these quarters in 2003. He had been collecting coins casually for years, setting aside any that looked interesting. During a cold winter evening, he was going through his collection with a new magnifying glass his grandchildren had given him for Christmas. That's when he noticed the doubling on his 1991 quarter. After having it authenticated, he sold it for $850, enough to take his wife on a cruise they'd been dreaming about for years. What makes error coins like the 1991 double-die quarter so appealing to collectors is that they represent a perfect convergence of rarity, historical significance, and accessibility. Unlike many valuable coins that were minted in small numbers to begin with, these were produced in large quantities, but with a specific error that went unnoticed initially. This creates a treasure hunt aspect that's irresistible to collectors and casual coin enthusiasts alike. The condition of these quarters dramatically affects their value, perhaps even more so than with the 1982 error coins we discussed earlier. Because the doubling is subtle and can be obscured by wear, examples with minimal circulation are particularly prized. A 1991 double-die quarter in MS 63 condition might be worth around $800, while one that's been in circulation and shows significant wear might bring only $75 to $150. Still, that's a significant premium over face value. The 1991 double-die quarter also illustrates an important principle in coin collecting. Knowledge is power. Many of these quarters were in circulation for years before collectors realized their significance. The people who profited most were those who educated themselves about error coins and examined their change carefully. This pattern repeats throughout numismatic history. The informed collector has a tremendous advantage. If you think you might have one of these quarters, you'll need a good magnifying glass or coin loop to check for the doubling. Focus on the word liberty and the date. The doubling appears as a slight shadow or offset duplicate of the original design. It's subtle but distinct once you know what to look for. And remember, you're looking for a 1991 quarter with no mint mark from Philadelphia. One collector in Texas made headlines in his local newspaper after finding 3 of these quarters in a single roll from his bank. He had made it a habit to check every quarter with a specific date, based on articles he'd read in coin collecting magazines. His persistence paid off when he discovered these 3 specimens, which he sold for a combined $1,500. Not bad for a $10 investment in a roll of quarters. The story of the 1991 double-die quarter reminds us that minting errors, while rare, happen in every era. The U.S. Mint strikes billions of coins each year, and despite rigorous quality control, errors will occasionally slip through. For collectors, these mistakes represent opportunity, a chance to find exceptional value in everyday objects. What's particularly interesting about both the 1982 and 1991 error quarters is how they represent different types of minting mistakes. The 1982 error involved the wrong planchet material, while the 1991 error occurred during the die manufacturing process. Together, they provide a fascinating glimpse into the various ways things can go wrong in the complex process of mass-producing currency. The 1991 double-die quarter also reminds us of the transition period in U.S. minting technology. The early 1990s saw the mint beginning to adopt more computerized design and production methods, which would eventually make such errors much rarer. These quarters represent some of the last major error coins from the era of traditional minting techniques. So there you have it, 2 quarters from 1982 and 1991 that look ordinary at first glance, but could be worth thousands if you know what to look for. These coins remind us that value isn't always obvious. And sometimes the most exciting treasures are hiding in plain sight. Whether you're an experienced collector or someone who's just discovered the fascinating world of numismatics, these modern rarities offer something truly special. The possibility that extraordinary value could be jingling in your pocket right now. Next time you receive change, take a moment to look at those quarters. Check the date, examine the edge, look for doubling in the inscriptions. You never know, you might be holding a small fortune in your hand. And even if you don't strike it rich, you'll develop an appreciation for the craftsmanship, history, and occasional happy accidents that make coin collecting one of the world's most enduring hobbies. Thanks for joining me on Numismatic Treasures. If you enjoyed this deep dive into modern rare quarters, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what coins you'd like me to explore next. Until next time, keep checking that change. Your next great find could be just a coin flip away.